Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take for Market Rebellion on this hump day on a Wednesday. We're really excited about today because of the fact that we're starting to see the market start to move a little bit to the upside again. Matter of fact, yesterday, really powerful move to the upside, explosive move to the upside. Did give back a little bit of that towards the latter part of the day, but still, when you have a day that you're up over 500 points to the upside and an S&P that's up 36 points, the NASDAQ flat. We've been talking about dislocation all the time. We've been talking about different parts of the markets and rotation being something that could be very healthy. As a matter of fact, we had Tony Dwyer on yesterday. We do these roundtables every Monday. Well, this week, obviously, Memorial Day weekend, coming off of that, we had Tuesday. So we had the roundtable. We had Tony Dwyer on there. Banks and tanks. That's what his theme was. And that's an interesting theme because that has been out of favor, right? But yesterday, just an explosive move, absolutely explosive move in the banks. As a matter of fact, let's go through a couple of those names. Goldman Sachs up 9% yesterday, recapturing 200. JP Morgan up 7%. American Express, this is a name that continues to be very inexpensive, in my opinion. I've owned it for a long period of time. I know the stock really well, but that was up 6%. And I look over at Citi. It was up over 9% yesterday. That actually, I heard Mike Mayo this morning talking on Squawk Box. That is one of his top stocks in terms of where does he see performance coming from. And that was one of the names that he brought up. He had a couple, but that was definitely the first name that he brought up. Bank of America up about 7%. You get the idea. The financials absolutely were the leadership role in yesterday's market and then that move that was just absolutely explosive to the upside. And as I say, gave back some of that. As a matter of fact, when you look over at the NASDAQ, barely could finish even close to flat, maybe a little bit in the red. And that was kind of the part of the day of the rotation where towards the end of the day, all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you look over and you see Microsoft and Apple and Netflix and all these various names that everybody's darling, and they're down. I mean, Apple was down $2 yesterday by the end of the day. Microsoft was down a couple of dollars. Netflix was down about 3.5%. So some pretty big moves in the names that everybody was flocking to the downside, maybe taking a little bit of money off the table, maybe putting them over and shifting over in some of the other areas. As a matter of fact, we had some great paper yesterday in some of the financials. I'll get to that in just a moment, but still back to yesterday, we had the industrials, and the industrials explosive move too. Now, we've been talking about the industrials in certain little sort of packets where we've put them together in a spot where, are we talking about defense names? Are we talking about true industrial names? What are we looking at here? Well, across the board yesterday, it was Raytheon, Caterpillar, Boeing, all strong, Dow, 3M, all of those names up over 3.5%, 3.5% or more to the upside. So a huge day there. And then throw in the energy names because the explosiveness of those names has been very, very rapid over the last couple of weeks, especially after all of that big debacle and the debates and the oil going and the negative pricing, all the rest of that craziness. Well, oil has been making a very sharp move to the upside. I talked yesterday about that monthly move from 17 to 33. Well, trading around 33, 34 as we speak. So another area within that, not just Exxon and Chevron, not just the big boys, but it seems like the oil service names have caught a bid here and there as well. And that's been something. Take a look at the OIH. You'll get a little bit of an idea of what I'm talking about here. Some of those names, maybe there's a little bit of air left in the tank because a lot of people were very, very concerned about many of these various names. You look at the volatility, by the way, yesterday. It's pretty interesting. You get a big move like we had yesterday. You'd expect to see maybe a pretty hard hit volatility. We really didn't see that. We still have volatility in these markets. And even into today, now this morning, as I was working out this morning, I was listening to CNBC, and as I'm listening, markets were exploding to the upside once again. We're talking about 400, 500 type point moves to the upside in the pre. As we got a little bit closer to the opening, we started to lose a little bit of that steam, and maybe some of that rotation is a part of this because as we were losing that steam, okay, we open up somewhere close to 300 or 400 points to the upside, still pretty strong. I'm looking right now, we're under 200 points. Actually, just a couple of minutes ago, I was taking a look at the market, sitting over at my desk in our office over here, and I'm looking and I'm like, wow, we're only up about 260 points. We really have pulled back from where we started the day. I'm looking right now, we're up 160 points. Now we're up 140 points. That just shows you how quickly we are moving to the downside. I'm looking at red in the NASDAQ and red in the S&P. The S&P is now down about 6 points. Not a huge move to the downside, but considering where we started off the day, that's a pretty significant move. And the NASDAQ down 1.5% right now. It's down 136 points. So a lot of those names that everybody's darlings, that seems to be a rotation and moving around that. Tony Dwyer, as I mentioned, he said the banks and the tanks, and he was saying, hey, look, you got to shift around your portfolio, not specifically on names, but just a portfolio in terms of exposure, in terms of value and growth and all of that, all the different jargon that everybody hears all the time from all the different talking heads on TV. So the dislocation is in place. We've been talking about it for a long time. There are days where the NASDAQ's absolutely sprinting to the upside, far in front of the S&P and far in front of the Dow. This is absolutely the opposite today. That's what we're seeing in the first 30 to 60 minutes. Things can change on a dime. We were just talking about that. As a matter of fact, changing on a dime, now we're up 115 points. So a really interesting marketplace that we're in right now. And as I said, we talked about volatility a moment ago, holding up. Well, you can see now why volatility is holding up. There's still a lot of movement within the market itself. There's an incredible amount of movement within the market itself. So that's why you can see in the VIX itself trading right around 27, 28, somewhere in that sort of a range, maybe even pushing up towards 29 if I had a chance to take a look at that. But we are seeing volatility holding on, and for probably the right reasons, even though my anticipation yesterday would have been, well, we ought to see this volatility get hit pretty hard. It did not happen. Now today, we're seeing gold once again dropping. Now gold got up towards, it was holding on to 1700 really well. Then it got up towards 1750. And then we started to pull back and watching gold just sort of bring itself back on down. And now it's back below 1700. It hasn't held on, at least for today. Oil, another one of those. It's off small, nothing big today, but a lot of activity and a lot of conversation going on right now about the financials. They had the big day yesterday. They're starting off with a huge day today, probably starting to give back a little bit as I've sat down here because we're 200 points lower right now than when I sat down in this chair to start this off just a couple of moments ago. So what am I seeing in terms of unusual option activity? Well, I'll give you an idea of just a day in the life of how interesting, because of the kind of movement we had yesterday, how things can move and all the unusual option activity we had. The volumes were strong. Really, really strong yesterday. And I think that's very important because I had talked about yesterday how we had seen kind of a slowing down, still record pace in any other year, but a slowing down for 2020 over the last 3-4 trading sessions. Not yesterday. Yesterday, we pushed upwards of over 29 million contracts yesterday. Big day, very powerful, very strong, a lot of participation, a lot of rotation. So that was a big story yesterday. So I was looking just for fun. I had 4 positions that I took off yesterday on the option side. Didn't do anything with any of the stocks, but of the option positions, I sold out of 4 positions. I added 6 positions. I added 1 position today. Gives you a pretty good idea. We've had some nice activity and some nice rotation, trying to be disciplined as best as possible because that's what this is all about. And it's what keeps you, and first of all, keeps you sane. But second of all, you've got to have a discipline. You've got to have that plan as you're going in and start as that trade happens. You already know where your entries or exit points going to be for good or bad. That's the key. So Barclays today hitting. Now Barclays has already made a pretty nice move, but this is a very inexpensive stock still. It's under $6 a share. It has been struggling for a very long period of time, but when we've seen unusual option activity, they've been pretty accurate in the past. We'll see if they are this time. 15,000 of the July 6 calls. Pretty aggressive buying in those calls today. So 15,000 of those for about 35 cents. They're spreading some of those off. It looks like some of that might have been rolled from a trade back in April, of a successful trade in April that's now rolled and gone up into this July 6 call. So that's something to keep an eye on. I love the risk reward of those kind of trades. Stock was trading around 580 at the time. As I mentioned, they did hedge some of that off actually at the 7 strike as well. So not fully committed, but at the same time, a really, really interesting trade and always good to see because the financials yesterday, those were 2 of the names of the 6 that I talked about yesterday that I added. I added in a couple of different financial names as well. Folks, have a great day of trading. It's going to be an exciting day. We already know that. We're looking at movement that's absolutely insane in the first hour of trading. We'll see how the rest of the day unfolds. Right now, we are up about 135 points on the Dow. We're down about 8 points on the S&P, down about 150 points on the NASDAQ. That's where we sit right now. Educate yourself, understand the options world. That's where the explosive volumes are. I just got done talking about some of these volumes. Even on slow days now, those are record days in the past. Giddy up, guys. Have a great day.